Imagine you've got this wildly terrifying book about a great white shark just snacking on vacationers. People absolutely could not put it down. So, naturally, the big studio bosses decide they need to put that pure panic up on the big screen. And who do they hand the keys to? This young 20-something kid named Steven Spielberg. And man, Steven, he had these massive, almost impossible dreams for what this could actually be. Normally, back then, you'd shoot a movie like this in a giant fake swimming pool on a backlot. You know, safe, controlled, totally manageable. But Steven, he flat out refused. He wanted the real ocean. He picked Martha's Vineyard because it had these shallow waters with this pristine white sand, letting them build heavy machinery right near the ocean floor. At the start, they actually toyed with the idea of training a real great white, like literally teaching it tricks. But yeah, they quickly realized real sharks don't exactly take direction, so they abandoned that whole idea and decided to build giant robot sharks instead. So the biggest star of this production wasn't some hotshot Hollywood actor. Nope. It was this massive 25-foot machine made of rubber and metal. They named him Bruce, after Steven's lawyer, which is pretty hilarious if you think about it. Bruce had these massive white teeth, and the builders were incredibly proud of their giant toy. But here's the catch. They took this highly complicated, delicate machine and just dumped it straight into the real, salty ocean. It was literally like throwing a plugged-in toaster right into a washing machine. Yeah, you can guess what happened. The salt water just instantly ate through Bruce's wires, completely ruined his delicate moving parts. The absolute minute they actually put their big, expensive rubber star in the ocean, he sank straight down, just a heavy, lifeless chunk of metal hitting the cold ocean floor. The crew had to send these completely masked scuba divers plunging down into the dark water just to rescue the totally useless thing. Suddenly, Steven is sitting there with a massive, highly expensive problem. He's got no working shark, and the real ocean, it's just wildly unpredictable. Wild waves are rocking the cameras, sudden storms keep shutting down production entirely, and random sailboats just keep casually drifting right into the frame. A shot that should take 10 minutes ends up taking agonizing hours. Because of all this total chaos, the schedule absolutely exploded. They planned to be out there for 58 days. They stayed for 159. And that budget, it shot up from $3.5 million to a whopping $9 million. You can only imagine the vibe on set. You've got these freezing, totally miserable actors just trapped on tiny boats for endless hours. Everyone is so exhausted, Bruce is breaking down constantly, hoses randomly bursting and spraying water everywhere. He even had different sets of teeth depending on what he had to bite. Honestly, he looked so fake half the time, getting all tangled up in seaweed, that the frustrated crew started jokingly calling the movie flaws. Steven himself just gave up and called the broken robot the Great White Turd. Their giant star was just one giant headache. The studio bosses were getting super angry, and Steven is genuinely terrified his career might be over before it really even begins. He simply couldn't depend on his broken robot anymore. He had to get creative. He had to figure out a completely different way to scare people without actually showing the monster. And that's when he came up with this brilliant shift. The camera itself becomes the shark. He placed it looking up from the dark underwater, watching the swimmers from underneath. You're not seeing a rubber toy anymore. You're seeing the world right through the eyes of the predator. To make it work, they relied heavily on these bright yellow barrels. The unseen shark would drag these barrels across the water, and you just knew something massive was underneath pulling them along. It's exactly like hearing a sudden bump in the night. What your brain invents in the dark is always way, way scarier than whatever is actually making the noise. Sometimes the camera showed absolutely nothing but dark water, sometimes just a fin. That empty ocean, it became totally terrifying. And the chaos definitely didn't stop with the shark, by the way. They were shooting on this real fishing boat called the Orca. They even painted fake bird poop on it to make it look authentic. Well, the real ocean eventually sank the Orca right in the middle of filming. But, the actors were stuck together out there for so long, their genuine, real-life exhaustion actually made the scenes feel incredibly natural. When Steven finally wrapped, he just had this chaotic, messy pile of footage. But in the editing room, they miraculously saved it, ruthlessly cutting away the weak, fake-looking shots to build nothing but pure suspense. When they finally tested the movie with a real audience, everyone on the crew was just holding their breath. They thought people might laugh at the rubber shark, but they didn't laugh at all. They screamed. They literally jumped completely out of their seats. Part of what made it so deeply terrifying was that they mixed in actual, highly dangerous underwater footage of real sharks shot by professional divers. Dropping that real footage in made the whole ocean feel incredibly authentic, elevating the danger to a whole new level. But the movie still needed something to really tie all that suspense together, you know? So the composer came back with this incredibly simple, almost shockingly basic idea. Just two low notes on a piano, E and F. Played together, they clashed in a way that just sounded profoundly, deeply unsafe. At the start, Steven actually thought this simple music was a joke, like he literally laughed. But then he heard it layered into the movie and he realized it was absolutely perfect. It sounded exactly like a heartbeat, starting really slow, then getting faster and faster as the danger gets closer. This accelerating tempo actually became the true voice of the hidden shark. It let you feel the intense, creeping danger long before you ever even saw a thing. Because of all the broken machines, the movie completely missed its original Christmas release date. The studio had to push it all the way to the summer of 1975. And that delay, well, it turned into this incredibly lucky accident. Television ads made everyone wildly curious, and people started lining up around entire city blocks in the sweltering heat. This accidental delay basically invented the modern summer blockbuster. It was an absolute sensation. People were screaming in the dark theaters, and they left genuinely afraid to go swimming. I mean, it made more money than any movie before it, becoming a giant worldwide success that made Steven super famous. That iconic two-note heartbeat even won an Academy Award, and it completely changed how studios approached big movies forever. They figured out summer was the perfect season for massive releases, and everyone just started copying the formula. Looking back, it's pretty wild to realize that The Broken Shark was actually a strange, secret gift. Think about it. If Bruce had worked perfectly, they probably would have shown him way too much, and seeing all that wet rubber would have completely ruined the fear. Being forced to hide the monster is what actually created the suspense, proving to filmmakers everywhere that less can sometimes feel like a whole lot more. The entire chaotic process showed that filmmaking is really just extreme problem solving. That exhausted crew survived the freezing water, the broken machines, the sinking boats, and the endless delays simply by relying on their imaginations. They kept working until it was done, and they somehow managed to turn their absolute biggest obstacles right into the movie's greatest magic. Today, filmmakers can just sit at a computer and conjure up perfect digital monsters. But this movie still feels so special because of its rough, practical magic. The physical struggle of making it is kind of like playing an old acoustic guitar. You know, it might be a little rough around the edges, a little imperfect, but it is just full of unmistakable, undeniable soul. Sometimes the thing that goes horribly wrong is the exact thing that saves everything. It really leaves you wondering if true fear always lives inside our own minds. What other monsters are we building in the dark? What we cannot see can absolutely become the most frightening thing of all. Anyway, if you had fun hanging out and diving into this with me, hit that like button, share it around, and make sure to subscribe so we can do it again. Catch you later.